I mean, what's Pro Football Focus doing? Last week they had Brady. This week they got Brady.
We're literally doing it differently from everybody else.
As a matter of fact, moving forward from this point on, I will not make reference to PFF.
Do you not understand that they are that way because you're Joe Flacco?
You just like to discredit things that people deserve credit for.
That you can't possibly be expected to defend that.
Talk about the game, Sam.
So,
who cares about what people think about us?
Yeah, I like football season and all the things that go with it.
We're back with the PFF NFL Podcast. Today talking a monster trade, a former number 4 overall pick getting released, and my favorite player getting hurt once again. Kind of a sad day, but we're going to kick things off with our friends over at Monkey Knife Fight. This is one of the best deals we've ever given out, Sam. For just $20, you put $20 in your account at Monkey Knife Fight, and you're going to get a free PFF Edge, which is $40 of value. You get it for only $20. So you put the $20 in, you get the opportunity to turn that 20 into even more money by playing daily fantasy and prop games at one of the fastest growing fantasy sports sites in the USA. That's Monkey Knife Fight. And you go there, you deposit your $20 with the promo code PFF today, and you'll get PFF Edge in return. This feels like a no-brainer. So go check it out. It's Monkey Knife Fight. Deposit $20. The promo code's PFF. You get a free PFF Edge and a chance to win even more money. Sam, let's get right into it. Yannick Ngakoue from the Jacksonville Jaguars to the Minnesota Vikings. Your thoughts?
Yeah, an interesting move. I was kind of curious who was going to trade for him and what the considerations would be. You know, the talk that they want a first rounder and all this kind of stuff, that always seemed a little bit far-fetched. But Ngakoue is this fascinating character because he's still 25 years old. Like, the Vikings now have, in terms of sort of proven pass rushers, you've got Ngakoue and Danielle Hunter, both of whom are still only 25, and both of whom have this incredible wealth of experience. But in theory, he should be entering his prime. He's got one season of like elite pass rush production behind him, but there's so many question marks attached to that. Like, he hasn't got back to that 2017 level since, hasn't really been that close to it. He is as close to a liability in the run game as you're going to find from an edge rusher at the NFL level. And, you know, there have been some issues in terms of essentially forcing his way out of Jacksonville, not wanting to stay there long term. So I think it's worth rolling the dice if you're Minnesota. You didn't bring back Everson Griffin. You had the ability to make it happen. It's not an expensive deal. So, yeah, I think it's worth a shot. You've got a defensive coach who's got experience of getting the most out of players. For them, I think it's worth a shot. For Jacksonville, clearly the guy didn't want to be there, and you probably weren't going to do better than this. So I don't know if it's a win-win, but it's a decent deal, I think, for either side.
Yeah, it's a second rounder and a conditional fifth that the Vikings have given up here, and I know a lot of people,
which can turn into a third,
which could turn into a third with the but also there's the whole compensatory pick situation and all that stuff. And if Minnesota lets him walk and he gets another monster deal, perhaps they end up getting a third in return. Whether that's their reasoning or not, I do think they were heading into the season with a defense that loves to get pressure with their front four with only one legitimate option in Danielle Hunter. Right. I think that's the big thing, right? There's a little bit of desperation here from the Vikings, I think, where beyond Hunter, it's one of the worst defensive lines in the NFL. And when they've been good in recent years, they've had multiple rushers. We're just a couple years removed from Danielle Hunter being their number 3 pass rusher, right? So this felt like a move that made sense for a team that is half rebuilding and half contending in the NFC North, as we broke down in the preview last week or 2 weeks ago. So Ngakoue, as you mentioned, not good against the run. They're trying to relive some of that 2017 magic that the entire Jags team had, where, you know, he can get after the quarterback. But I think at least having those two guys rushing off the edge should help in Minnesota rather than having absolutely no pass rush which is what it looks like on paper beyond Danielle Hunter.
How good do you think he can actually be? Because I've seen a lot of people talk about him as an elite pass rusher. And I think he has certain elite traits, but I don't know if he is an elite pass rusher. And I think the one season he had in 2017 where he played at that kind of level, there was a lot of other quality on that defensive line as well that sort of allowed him to be more of a one-dimensional player. You can win around the edge constantly because we've got guys wrecking the inside as well, and you don't actually need that inside counter because the quarterback has to stay deep in the pocket with what's coming up the middle. But if that isn't there, he becomes what we talked about with these sort of speed rushers that don't have the ability to convert it to power and to be more of an inside threat as well, and they become one-dimensional to the point where they're not easy to handle, but offensive tackles can deal with them. Like, you're going to give up some pressure, but if the pocket inside is stable and the offensive lineman can live with that initial burst off the edge, you're going to be able to limit the effectiveness that Ngakoue can have.
Yeah, I mean, I think in PFF terms, the last 2 years are probably what he is. He was a high 70s pass rusher from a grading standpoint. The last 2 years, the previous year he's 87. That was 2017. That was that peak season. And his win percentage has gone from 17 to 15 down to 13. So he's actually moving in the wrong direction, right, despite, as you said, being young, right? And we mention this all the time on the podcast. Being young doesn't mean you're going to get better every single game, every single week, every single season. So I think, something in the middle of like, hey, if he wins 15% of his rushes and is a high 70s, low 80s type of pass rusher, I mean, I think you're getting a lot of value out of that if you're the Minnesota Vikings. And then, as I said earlier, even more so because the question marks opposite Danielle Hunter were so great. This reminds me of like Laramie Tunsil going to Houston last year. It's like, in a vacuum, you're going, maybe you don't want to pay this for a left tackle, but when you have the literal worst left tackle situation in the NFL, and then Tunsil did develop into one of the best pass blockers, they got immense value out of that so far in 1 year. So I think Minnesota might see that value because the alternative to Ngakoue just for this particular season right now was pretty poor. So I think he'll be all right. He does win with more speed. I think you have to hide him on early downs and all that stuff. But you've got Matthew Stafford and Aaron Rodgers and whoever the Bears trot out there. You got some guys you have to pressure, and I think Ngakoue and Hunter will end up being a pretty good duo. I
don't see him getting back to that 2017 level of play, though. Do you?
No, I don't see that as a thing.
Yeah.
I think that was the one blip. Now, anybody can. I mean, again, we range of outcomes all the time, right? I mean, If he's going to grade between high 70s and high 80s, for the next 5 or 6 years, you get one or two of those seasons. But I don't think you're not trading for 2017. Looks like the arrow's pointed up, and he's one of the best pass rushers in the NFL. I mean, you're getting a good, not great pass rusher. So
right.
But again, I think the upgrade's massive just because. Who else were they going to be trotting out there this year? Not much. So let's move on to my favorite player getting hurt again, Sam. Derwin James is on the shelf.
Yes.
I'm sad.
Meniscus injury.
Yeah, it's not great. If we just go back, I use the phrase all the time. We have 5 years of data on Baker Mayfield, and 4 of them are elite. Derwin James, we have 3 years kind of college. And 2 years kind of in the NFL. His first year of college, he was a true freshman. He was our highest graded safety. Then he played only 100-something snaps as a sophomore. And then as a junior, he came back again, was our highest graded safety. And then as a rookie, was one of the highest graded safeties in the NFL. And then last year, a couple hundred snaps, handful of snaps, and that's it. So we really have about 3 full seasons of Derwin James grades out of 5, and all 3 he is by far among the best. At a position that we always talk about, can fluctuate a little bit. You can have bad years. You could, by pure production standards, right? You could fluctuate a little bit. Sometimes you have a challenging role, and it's dictated by the offense and all that stuff. Derwin has not had that. He has found a way to produce no matter what when healthy. Now, unfortunately, he's going to be missing time for, half of those years, 3 out of 6 years since entering big-time college football. I'm hoping it doesn't become, even more of a trend for Derwin going forward.
Well, that was what I was going to ask is, like, how close is he to getting that injury-prone label? Because at the moment, like, Derwin James being on the field is a significantly bigger question mark than how good Derwin James will be when he's on the field. Like, it's pretty widely accepted that if Derwin James is out there, he's amazing.
Right.
But now that's starting to become kind of an issue. The other thing that was effect on the Chargers. It sounds crazy, right? Because Derwin James is amazing, but I don't actually know that this hurts them that badly, such as the way that they've stacked that defensive secondary. Between the skill sets that you get with Chris Harris and with Desmond King, I think they're pretty well positioned to be able to ride through this and be all right. Like, obviously, anytime you lose a guy as good as Derwin James, it's an issue, but it's not like fundamentally changing how good this defense is in a way that it would if, other teams with elite playmakers had them disappear.
Yeah. Let me just fast forward to our week previews, right? And in week 2, as we're previewing Chargers Chiefs, and in week 4, we're previewing Chargers Bucks, and then in week 5, actually, Chargers Saints, or 6. I mean, it's their 5th game. Chargers Saints. They're playing potentially three of the best offenses in the NFL in their first 5 games. In this whole offseason, we were like, wow, the Chargers are doing it differently, right? They're building from back to front. They're building a versatile secondary. They're adding one of the best cornerbacks of the decade in Chris Harris to a secondary that already had Casey Hayward and Derwin and has a couple good pass rushers. So when we're talking about combating the Chiefs, especially combating the Bucks with their 3 viable tight ends, and then combating the Saints, who have Jared Cook, who has emerged and become a pretty good weapon, and they spread the ball around. I mean, you need Derwin to do all that stuff. So not only does it affect them, I don't know if this is season long, half season, if it's whatever it is, those first few games are in jeopardy against, really difficult passing offenses. So I think it's going to affect them pretty badly.
I mean, I think it'll affect them, but like I say, most teams that lose a guy like Derwin do not have a Desmond King and a Chris Harris waiting in the wings to be able to play the slot and match up with tight ends and those kinds of things. Like the Chargers do. They were already in a spot where they didn't have too many guys like that, but they were already in a spot where getting all of those guys on the field at the same time was going to take a certain degree of creativity. So now, I mean, it makes life easier in terms of it's just a simpler matchup, right? Chris Harris is going to cover the slot. Desmond King is going to be the strong safety that matches up with tight ends. The end. Like I say, I think it'll hurt them, but I don't think it's a catastrophic problem. I think they already had the quality to be able to deal with this better than almost any other secondary in the NFL.
It does put a little pressure on 2019 second rounder Nasir Adderley. He was out all of last season. He looked like your pure free safety coming out of the draft. If he's going to play that role, because the Chargers they're the most Seattle of all the Seattle cover 3 teams. I mean, They stick to that system even more than Seattle does at this point. So here's a free safety, here's a strong safety. Rayshon Jenkins will probably play that strong safety role. Nasir Adderley more of that free safety role. So I think the pressure's on those guys to produce. Yes, there's some versatility, as you mentioned, with Desmond King, with Chris Harris. Having Casey Hayward's great. But, man, I really just wanted to see this team. I just wanted to see that back 7 compete, especially against some of those really good teams early in the season.
Did you see the snaps that Derwin was getting playing cornerback in one-on-one drills against Keenan Allen?
Yes.
Here's what I was thinking about asking at some point before he got injured. Like, would the Chargers be better off asking Derwin to become the number 2 cornerback than they would be having him as this jack of all trades, guy that can do everything in the secondary? Is he actually more valuable if he can be a viable, half-decent number 2 cornerback for them, as opposed to them having to, that's the one question mark that we circled in the secondary, right? They're loaded everywhere. They've got a million slot options. They've got an elite number 1 in Casey Hayward. That number 2, we were kind of mocking them to a corner in the top of the first round, and it's like it's just the one bit that I'm not 100% confident in. But if Derwin can go one-on-one with Keenan Allen, who's arguably the best route runner in the NFL, and hold up, the value of being a legit number 2 corner is probably higher than the value of being this guy that does everything.
Yeah, absolutely. But, again, he does everything, but like kind of in a limited role. It's like,
more
hey, you're
boring.
the strong safety. Yeah, like you're really good at what you do, but my goodness. I mean, so that's what Jalen Ramsey did at Florida State. I mean,
right.
Jalen Ramsey, who's now an outside corner, came in as a true freshman, played free safety. Then he kicked down into the slot his second year. And then his third season, he became an outside corner, and that's what he's become at the NFL level. I mean, there's a weight difference in Derwin. He's a little bit bigger and all that stuff. But I used to joke, right? He could play tight end. He could do all these different things. Now we have actual video footage of him manning up against a great route runner like Keenan Allen. Like, absolutely, I would have loved to see that, take that shot at him at corner. And we say that draft time all the time, right? That guy, like Marvell Tell comes out of USC a couple years ago as a safety who has just, the upside at cornerback is just so immense. The Colts are going to, give him a shot there with his length and movement skills and all that stuff. We've seen that with a few guys. That would have been fascinating. And Derwin is one of the few freak athletes that can actually pull it off. And then worst case scenario, you put him back at safety and just, go play football the way you normally did. So I'm sad for football, Sam. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, it is a bummer. I'm kind of curious to see how that would have worked and whether the Chargers would actually be better off doing it, though. But yeah, hopefully, it's a meniscus injury. It shouldn't be a long-term thing, but I think they're talking about some kind of significant time. So he's going to miss some kind of regular season action. We'll see how they patch that up without him. But like I say, I think they'll be okay.
Also sad for football. Leonard Fournette has just been released by the Jacksonville Jaguars here on this Monday morning after they tried to trade him. Doug Marrone is already on the Zoom call saying they couldn't even get a 5th or 6th round pick for him. We've beaten him up quite a bit on here, but let's just keep it simple. Leonard Fournette is not a good back for today's NFL. He doesn't make guys miss. I think, I love going back the way I did with Derwin and let's see the whole body of work, because we have it for these guys. We've seen Leonard Fournette. We graded him when he was a true freshman. He has one really good season out of the 6 that we've graded for him. That's the truth. And it was that sophomore year.
It was really good.
It was really good. He actually, I remember him coming in as a freshman thinking, this guy doesn't move all that well. He's more of a power back. And then his sophomore year, he added some wiggle. And I was like, all right, he started to turn things around a little bit. But then his junior year, he was a little banged up and he didn't have it. And then his entire NFL career, even when it seemed like he was one of the catalysts for that AFC championship run by the Jags, he's straight line, doesn't actually run people over at the NFL level. And he's like Thomas Jones, takes what's there. Late career Thomas Jones takes what's there, and that's it. So disappointing 3-year run for Fournette in Jacksonville.
So just to jump back to the Derwin thing for a second, I pulled up all of the snaps that Derwin actually has in the NFL playing wide cornerback over his career to see what he's managed.
Well done, PFF Ultimate.
Now, most of that is going to be against tight ends and running backs as opposed to wide receivers. But Derwin, when he's lined up at cornerback so far, wide cornerback, has been targeted 5 times, allowed 3 catches for 20 yards, has given up 1 first down from 5 targets, and has 4 defensive stops. So I'm all for the Derwin at cornerback experiment. But yeah, back to Lenny. So generally, I think the league has gone away from the giant bruising power back, right? The guys, that used to be, Christian Okoye, right? This monstrous guy that was like as big as defensive lineman, just rumbling through the line and trying to get as much yardage as possible. That was an effective strategy once upon a time. It isn't anymore. And most of those guys are just not successful. And it's not the type of skill set you should be looking for when you're trying to draft a running back, regardless of where you're drafting them. On the other hand, it can still be successful with the right sort of skill set, right? Like Derrick Henry is maybe the archetype right now, is this 250-pound monster in a league that's trending ever more towards smaller, faster defenders. Like when he gets ahead of steam up, it's really hard to stop that guy. He's massive. I mean, we were just talking about, Dante Dion, the Rams cornerback. That guy is outweighed by 100 pounds trying to stop a Derrick Henry. Like, it's absurd. It's just like trying to throw yourself in front of a freight train. You're not stopping it. So, like, Leonard Fournette should be in the Derrick Henry mold, but he isn't. Like, he doesn't run people over. Derrick Henry smashes guys left, right, and center. He's got a stiff arm from hell. Like he is really hard to bring down, however effective you believe that to be from your overall offensive strategy. But Fournette isn't. He's pretty fast in a straight line when he's going. He's pretty heavy, but not oppressively so. But he doesn't have the thing that Derrick Henry has, just this juggernaut-like ability to smash through whatever contact is coming to him. He runs relatively quickly in a straight line and usually goes down upon first contact.
To be fair, I think we could have said the same thing about Henry after the first, 2.5 years of his career, and said, you know what, why isn't he running people over? And it did feel like that Thursday night game against the Jaguars in 2018 was like the turning point for Henry when he decided to go full beast mode and start running people over. And he always had it in him, but then it just came out after people were like, why isn't he doing this? Why isn't he running people over as much? I'm not saying Fournette could just flip the switch or anything like that, but Henry kind of got off to a slow start, I think, in his career when it came to the way he, compared to where he's been running over this last year and a half.
He certainly did in terms of broken tackles, but he was always averaging a ton of yards after contact. Like, that guy has always been tough to bring down in a way that Fournette hasn't been. Like, there's a couple of years ago, there was a play that I think is the most Fournette play ever, where he got into open space against a Steelers defensive back. I forget who it was, Mike Hilton maybe, and lowered his head, plowed into him at 1,000,000 miles an hour. It was an incredible collision, and he made no yards after contact. Like, he sent the DB flying, but he hit the ground after it. At which point, there is no point in what you're doing. It's great to look at, like you just flattened a dude who weighs 80 pounds less than you do, but you gained no yards in doing so. So what was the point in it? Like, if that was a normal running back, he would have just juked the guy, made him miss, and gained 4 yards after contact. Like, the thing that you're good at is literally pointless.
It's also, I love another reason why I love the PFF grades. He did have that one game against the Steelers his rookie season, 2017, because he didn't even average 4 yards per attempt that year. And that included a 90-plus yard run against the Steelers in week 5, I think it was. So, he runs for 182 yards, 90 of which came on one play.
Right.
But the way we graded it was it's pretty much all on the Steelers. They completely busted the run fit. Fournette ran through the open hole fast. As you mentioned, he could do that fast. Mm-hmm. So if you bust a run fit, he might be able to take it 90 yards. So on the season, he still averaged less than 4 yards a carry, including that 90-yard run. And grade-wise, even in that game, we were like, hey, he actually didn't grade all that well in the Steelers game. He just kind of ran in a straight line and, did what he did. So I think it's enough beating up on Leonard Fournette. All that said, he could go pair with Derrick Henry right now, Sam. He could go to Tennessee, and they could both be back there.
Yeah, so for his career, he has gained 2.7 yards after contact per carry, which is not good. I mean, that is a bad number. In fact, I have to go past the first page on PFF Premium Stats 2.0 to find that, where that lands in terms of running backs last season. It's a lot. Like, Philip Lindsay had 2.71 yards per carry after contact last season, and Philip Lindsay weighs about as much as your left leg. Like, Leonard should be gaining more than that if you're going to be a power back. Any decent, like Nick Chubb was at 3.7, a full yard per carry after contact. So he just hasn't been what anybody thought he was going to be, I think, at number 4 overall. Even if you thought number 4 overall was a reach, he's still been a disappointment. My question would be, though, is there like Jacksonville's offensive line has been kind of garbage for his entire time there. So is there a scenario whereby he lands in a new team with a much better group of blockers in front of him, and you get to see something like what first-round Lenny is supposed to look like?
I think the answer is always the Ravens. But here's the thing. I watch Mark Ingram run.
He could be a beast in that offense on the basis that almost any running back could.
Everybody would be, right? And I would put everybody with the Colts, right? Like, hey, you're going to have a great offensive line. But the thing about Mark Ingram, if you have a power back with speed,
yeah,
I think they're even more valuable with the Ravens because you're going to have more yards before contact. Because forget this, it's still in your will. But there's something to, like, here's a dude running fast that you don't want to tackle. And when that happens over and over and over again, if you can assure that that's going to happen, that is not fun for the defense.
No, well,
right?
it's also just physics.
I think chasing that is difficult to happen, difficult to do. But, like, if you know that you could put him in that system, Fournette could be scary.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think chasing it is the difficult part. The difficult part is getting the thing necessary to make that happen. Like, it will happen in Baltimore because they have a good offensive line and Lamar Jackson and an offense that exploits those two things together to generate the highest yards before contact figure in the NFL. If you have that, you can then go and find the running back that makes perfect sense within it. It's getting a running back who you know can exploit that and just thinking it'll happen because, for no other reason. Like, you need to have the environment for that guy to succeed. I do agree that, look, if you are 200 and whatever he is, like 245 pounds and can run really fast, like, it's simple physics. Again, it's like there's enough Dante Dion's in the world where trying to stop that once it's got a head of steam is not easy. And, okay, he might have less ability to make guys miss and to, break tackles generally. But, like, if you put him in a system where instead of Jacksonville's offensive line making him pause and pick his way through gaps and slow down, if he can just run a damn straight line towards the open hole and suddenly he's one-on-one with a safety trying to come down and fill it, that's like eventually he's going to bust a couple of those. And in 2 out of his 3 years in the NFL, he's got long runs of like 80-plus yards. Like the third one, he's got a long of 25. So sometimes it doesn't work. But like he is a big play threat because of that size and speed combination. It's just that unlike Derrick Henry, it doesn't work as well in confined spaces and when he doesn't have like a full head of steam to just truck a guy.
Yeah, so I don't have a good answer for where he fits best.
Baltimore was a good answer. You did it.
Baltimore's, but like they've already stocked up on backs.
Right, but now he's going to cost like nothing. Like he's a cast-off.
True.
He just got dumped from Jacksonville, so the guy's asking price is not going to be high. I think Baltimore could absolutely add him as a competition and then see what sticks. Like if he's not good in the first couple of weeks they have him, they get rid of him and move on.
And, of course, the other limitation with Fournette, he's not great in the pass game. Caught a lot of passes last year. Doesn't do much with them after the catch. Same issue. But Leonard Fournette, a free agent right now. Sam, quick break to tell you about our friends over at Underdog Fantasy. It's our new favorite place to play fantasy football for real money. With Underdog, all you need to do is the fun part, which is draft. Forget about injuries, trades, waivers, or setting lineups. Just set it and forget it and wait for the winnings to come in, including this year's $1 million tournament. That's right. Just draft the best team, and you'll have a shot at $1 million in prizes. So just sign up for Underdog today. Enter Best Ball Mania for a chance at $1 million in prizes by going to UnderdogFantasy.com, or in your app store, you search Underdog Fantasy. So it's UnderdogFantasy.com or search Underdog Fantasy in your app store, and then enter the code PFF after you make your first deposit. Get in there, set it and forget it. Just draft. It's all Sam wants to do. He's lazy like you. Mm-hmm. So just draft your team. They'll pick the best players. I love best ball, and you have a chance to win $1 million. It's UnderdogFantasy.com or search Underdog Fantasy in your app store. All right, Sam, we're going rapid fire training camp buzz. Are we going to buy or sell? I asked my followers to give me their best training camp buzz. Let's go back and forth with things we're hearing and what we think, if they're legit or not. Let's start with Joe Burrow being a star at Cincinnati Bengals camp. They're already talking up the number 1 overall pick.
Yes. I'm kind of both. I think he will be a star, but I don't think he's going to be particularly great year one because he's going to get buried behind that offensive line. Like, it's kind of easy. It's relatively easy to look like a star as a quarterback in training camp with the red jersey that they can't touch. You know what I mean? It's a lot harder when everybody on the defense is trying to kill you and they can actually hit you and hurt you. So I can fully buy into the idea that Joe Burrow in the current scenario looks like a superstar. And I would imagine that all things being equal in his first season, like if they keep him clean, his grades, et cetera, from a clean pocket will be fantastic. My concern would be that I don't think there'll be enough of those for him to look good overall in year one. I think he'll struggle.
I'm buying. I think he's going to look like a star, but yeah, the offensive line is, a little sketchy. How about Baker Mayfield and Odell Beckham? This is it. It's just a year late.
Yeah.
They're starting to turn heads. They're going to do it.
So I think Odell Beckham will look back to being vintage Odell Beckham. I think he's going to look good. I'm starting to get kind of concerned about what I'm seeing from Baker Mayfield. Now, granted, this is all just working on limited snapshots from training camp. Like, most of this hype is coming from the Browns themselves, who keep posting these touchdowns of Baker to Odell. Tyler's probably in the booth over there crying about what I'm about to say. But even in these clips, like, Baker's doing some weird stuff in the pocket. Why are you dancing around? No, he's not upset. He's actually angry. I'm getting the finger from Tyler in the booth. But I'm getting these, Baker's still dancing around the pocket, making these weird moves that, like, this was your problem last year. This was the single biggest issue with your game, is getting happy feet in the pocket, doing crazy things that you didn't need to do. You need to get comfortable back there and deliver the pass. Now, he's delivering the pass, but I'm still a little bit worried by what he's doing in the pocket.
Look at you already. You're buying into training camp videos, looking at the wrong stuff. You don't know what they're working on.
You think they're working on happy feet?
Pocket movement, perhaps.
Pocket, like, nobody works on, like, dancing around like a psycho and then heaving the ball deep. Or if they do, that's a problem.
I'm buying that hype too.
Okay.
How about Big Ben? Arms looking great. Bounce back for Big Ben?
Bounce back for Big Ben. Kind of. I don't know why, but part of me wants to buy into this. It's now been like 2 years since we've seen, like, really good Big Ben. Obviously, the injury took him out last season, but even the year before that, he wasn't particularly great. Like, his numbers were significantly better, I think, than his down-to-down performance. So, and he injured a part of him that's a fairly serious thing if you're a quarterback and a guy that throws the ball for a living. So there's a lot of things that say that this shouldn't be a real bounce back for Roethlisberger, and yet for some reason I'm actually buying into this one.
I'm buying into all of it. He's bouncing
You're
back
like naturally optimistic. This, of course, you're the sucker that looks across all the training camp buzz and buys all of it.
You know what I'm not going to buy?
What are you not buying?
Rashawn Gary has had a few sacks. He's got some buzz going. I'm not ready yet. Rashawn Gary, I'm not buying into that one yet.
In fact, he is a perfect training camp hype guy, because he has dropped weight. He's got shredded. He's done all those off-season things. He was texting his coach at 30 minutes after midnight, asking him about what he could get better at in his day off.
That's part of the report too?
Yeah.
Come on.
This is all. Boy. He is actually, maybe this off-season has been the perfect training camp hype candidate. He's got all the hallmarks.
First in, last out kind of guy.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? Hard work beats talent per PFF. So
he's been
I'm
working
not
hard.
sure. I know, but I need to see it still.
Okay.
So I'm not buying into Rashawn Gary yet.
All right.
Le'Veon Bell, best shape of his life. That can't be true. That sounds like a fake one. Le'Veon Bell looks slow. Buying or selling?
No, I don't buy that he looks slow. I'm really interested to see if they're going to, like, Frank Gore him. Like, if Frank Gore's going to end up out-touching Le'Veon Bell with the Jets, because Frank Gore is this bionic man that never dies, and Adam Gase loves him, and Le'Veon Bell, he doesn't. Like, Le'Veon Bell has not worked so far with the Jets. Not 100% through the fault of his own, like the offensive line was bad. But if you have a bad offensive line, do you trust Frank Gore to just lower his shoulder pads and pick you up 3.5 every single play?
Yeah. Oh, my gosh.
It's going to be beautiful.
Running back buzz should all just be like that. Just shouldn't even be allowed. Unless you start dominating one-on-ones, you should not even have there shouldn't even be reports on running backs from training camp.
That's another one, especially now, that's like really hard to gauge, because you're not killing these guys the way you do in a regular game. There's very little sort of live contact. You're not taking these guys to the ground that often. Like, all this stuff about Leonard Fournette. Leonard Fournette probably looks fine in training camp because nobody can tackle him.
All right, two more.
What do you got?
Wide receiver Colin Johnson for the Jaguars, 6'6" monster, and wide receiver Brian Edwards for the Las Vegas Raiders, both getting huge hype, especially Edwards. People are already calling him wide receiver 1. He was the second wide receiver that the Raiders drafted behind Henry Ruggs.
Yes.
Edwards, let's start with Edwards. Well, Colin Johnson, I'm not completely buying it. He's a monster. He'll make a few catches. Great. Brian Edwards, are we buying his hype as a top wide receiver?
Yeah, I'm not buying Colin Johnson either. Edwards, I could see him winning that starting job. Like, the guy we assume will be their number one is Henry Ruggs. And we've talked before about, this idea that if you expect a rookie to come in, hit the ground running, and be an elite player right off the bat, it's not great odds you're battling. Now, Ruggs obviously has a ton of talent, but I can easily see a scenario whereby he is not like a consistent number one and he's a flashy big play guy, and you get some huge touchdowns out of him every now and again, some highlight reel plays, but a guy like Edwards eats into his snap count. Similarly, like the incumbent number one is Tyrell Williams, who is not exactly blowing you away in terms of what he can do, and has been battling injury as well for seemingly his entire time there. So the door is open for a guy like Bryan Edwards to be given the opportunity. And if you're a third-round pick or lower, half the battle is that opportunity, right? It's getting the chance to show that you belong, particularly now in truncated training camps. We don't have preseason. You have to maximize the reps you're getting. The window has been open for him to get additional reps and show what he's capable of. And there's nobody ahead of him that should keep him on the bench. There's no Ruggs you can make the argument for, but as I say, there's a gamble in that. So yeah, I don't know that he'll be that spectacular, but I think he'll get a shot to be better than the sort of standard third-round pick.
There's a reason why I think I buy into wide receiver hype. I think it's, it's tough to trust beat reporters, Sam. It's tough to trust that they know what they're seeing, but they know how to count catches, and it's not that tough to report on catches, right?
True.
If they're reporting on a left tackle or a defensive line battle, sometimes it can get sketchy depending on who it's coming from, but they can report guys are getting open and making catches, and it sounds like Bryan Edwards is doing that. Plus, you mentioned he's a third-round pick, but it was in one of the deepest wide receiver drafts that we've seen. So a third-round pick in this draft, he could have been a second-rounder.
Good point.
I know a lot of people did really love him out of South Carolina. He was one of the he had one of the widest ranges of opinions, I think, coming out. So because wide receiver play is so difficult to project, when I hear the good buzz coming out of camp, I'm more willing to buy in. So I'm going to buy into almost everything except for Rashawn Gary, Sam. and Colin Johnson, because, I think he's big, contested catch guy. He'll have some opportunities with Gardner Minshew, but maybe not like Edwards.
Jaguars head coach Doug Marrone just said that they tried to trade Leonard Fournette and couldn't get anything for him.
Oh, yeah.
Tough blow.
Yeah, couldn't get a fifth, a sixth, a conditional 100th.
Conditional seventh. So. Yeah, couldn't get anything. Nothing.
Sad day. Well, that's going to do it for us today. Guess what? We've got an incredible promo code. It's Kickoff30, which is 30% off of any PFF subscription between now and September 14th. Prepare to win your fantasy drafts with PFF Edge or Elite, which contains all of our rankings, projections, and cheat sheets necessary to dominate your leagues like I do, like Sam would if he played a little bit more. So honestly, it's the only way that I play fantasy. I don't even have to prep that much. I just have my PFF stuff nice and handy. I use their rankings as a guide, and honestly, I win a lot. So that's just it's just the truth, Sam. I always send you my my results from my expert league and all that stuff. Well, it all comes from PFF Fantasy. I use Elite. You can also get stuff out of Edge, though, and you have Kickoff30 as a promo code that you can use to get 30% off either of those subscriptions between now and September 14th. So go check it out. All right.
Hopefully you're back in the studio on Thursday, COVID-free.
Yep. We'll be out of quarantine, hopefully on Thursday. We'll see how we do. Lose the cough, lose everything.
Uh-oh.
No, I'm good. I'm feeling great. Feeling better.
I'm going to set up a screen between you and me here.
We probably should, at least for one show. All right. It's a tight one today. We'll see you guys on Thursday.
Thanks for watching the PFF YouTube channel. And if you want to subscribe, all you have to do is push the button. Don't forget everything you get. A little fantasy, push the button. A little green line for the gambling aspects of the game, push the button. College football, push the button. The YouTube channel from PFF.